everybody.
Hello.
So before I start, I just wanted to say thank you for the high five thing, because I don't know about you, but I high five every day when I'm pairing. It's like whenever the tests go green, we high five, and mine are really insipid, like two dying fish kind of colliding. So I'm going to take this back to the team and we'll be like firing on all cylinders. So I have to give you a disclaimer. This is my first technical talk. I've done this talk before, like a couple of weeks ago, but I've improved it since. But yes, it's my first tech talk, and I'm really scared because Regex and me are not best friends, I have to say. So I'm here as a beginner, and I'm learning Regex still. So I thought I'd cover some of the basics and then jump into some of the things that you can do with Regex and Ruby. But just to start the tale, the first time I ever saw Regex in code, I had no idea what I was looking at. I thought it was another gibberish language. I was just like, this person's just showing off. And it turns out that's kind of what they are anyway. But I just used to see the thing and go, that's Regex. I'm going to move on now and read some real code. But since that day, I decided I should probably start learning it. A friend of mine told me I should, and I was like, okay, I'll try. So I'm at the point where I know a little bit and enough to get by, but I'm trying to push myself a little further. And naturally, just because I learned how to use them, like the other day, I've been racking my brain to try and find problems to use them on. I've purposely searched for code katas that I could practice them on. Actually, coincidentally, there are a bunch in Exorcism, of which we have the person who writes Exorcism and runs Exorcism. I've dreamed of form fields that needed custom validation, and I've wondered how many ways I could transform data and manipulate and craft URLs. And when I shared my Regex dreams and aspirations with a developer friend of mine, this was his reaction. He was like, don't do that. No, don't do that. And I was a bit shocked. So us juniors, we kind of do that. We learn a thing and we try and find an excuse to apply the thing we just learned everywhere to do everything. And it turns out you need to use restraint. Who would have thought that? Because the minute you add stuff like that to your code base, the complexity level hits the roof, and the next person to touch your code is like, git blame, hate this person, hate them. So yeah. But sometimes it's okay to use Regex. Sometimes it is the right tool for the job. But first things first, what is a regular expression? Despite its appearance, it's not voodoo, witchcraft, or magic. It's a sequence of symbols and characters expressing a string or pattern to be searched for. So let's look at some Ruby. Ruby has a method called match on the string class. The method converts a pattern to Regex if it isn't already one, and then it invokes its match method on the string. Let's look at it in use. We use match on our string, and we pass it the pattern of double L in our parentheses, and we get a match data object created in memory with our match. So it's that simple. If we look at string match method in use inside of the method that we've created, we have a method here that takes a command for a trick. We can do a match for the exact command we're looking for with Ruby's match method. So we're matching sit as the pattern, and we'll get, if we get a match, it'll execute the line inside each of those statements. This is terrible code, but I need an example, so I did it. Our regex is in the brackets. Our regex in the brackets is the pattern to be matched, and it sits inside the forward slashes. So that's how a regex kind of looks in that case. And here's our method being used. We're passing in an argument in the form of a command for our dog. It's being evaluated inside our dog trick method. And you see two matches down there, one that jumps and it jumps into the others. So you can see that. One of the most used regex, Ruby's regex methods is gsub, which stands for global. The G stands for global and the sub stands for substitution. So this is the method you use to find and replace. And this is one of the most common tasks that you'll use regex for. This returns a copy of the string with all the occurrences of the supplied pattern substituted for the second argument. And there's also sub, which is not global, and that'll just find the first instance and replace, and do the find replace on the first match. But let's have a look at it in action. We have a string, hello, that we're calling with gsub, which we know means we're going to do a global find and replace. So it'll keep matching until it's done. And we're passing 2 arguments inside our parentheses. So the first one inside the square brackets and the slashes is the pattern that we're using. We're looking for any of those characters. And then the second argument, which is our asterisk, is the thing we're going to replace any of the matches with. And we get hello because it found the vowels and replaced them with asterisks. So we can pass in a range of A to Z, and what do you think will happen? Yeah, no surprises. All of the characters are replaced with an asterisk. So the last time I did this talk, I hadn't used scan, so it wasn't in the talk, but since then I've used it a lot and it's pretty great. Scan looks for a match on a pattern and then it collects any of the matches and chucks them in an array, which is obviously super handy because then you can iterate through them and do all sorts of stuff. And then there's also match, which is interesting. It's part of the match data class in Ruby, and there's a lot more to this method than meets the eye, but we'll start at the top. When you pass a string to match along with a pattern, it returns match as a match data object. Match only grabs the first match when it's used in its simplest form. And in comparison to scan, scan will grab all of the matches. So you can see there, and it's in an array, it's not an object. Whereas the match data one is a match data object. So where match data really excels is when you're using it with named captures. And when I was writing this talk, first off, I just actually asked in the Ruby Australia channel, I'm writing a talk and I'm lazy, like what things are good in Ruby with Regex? And everyone, senior developers, were like, group named captures are amazing. So I thought I'd talk about those. So we've defined 2 string variables there, rubyconf day 1 and the date, rubyconf day 2 and the date, one shameless plug. Now that I've got my plug out of the way, this regex is really long, so one more interruption, and this one's on topic. This is the alternative syntax for wrapping of regex patterns. This lets you have your regex on multiple lines or even include backslashes. It's because you're using it instead of the backslashes without escaping, so it's kind of useful when working with URLs and other things. So let's look at that in action. We have... All right, I'm reading my notes. Oh, I know what the question mark is. So I stole this off the internet and adapted it, but then I actually looked into I thought, is this a look ahead or a look behind? And it turns out it's not. The question marks are a lazy evaluator. So what it'll do is it'll just grab the first match rather than keeping on going, which is what we want here. So if we look at this regex, inside our pointy things, I'm not sure what they're called. Are they pointy brackets? Angle brackets. We've never had to describe them before, so there you go. Inside our angle brackets, we've defined some fields ourselves. That's not part of the regex. This will come apparent as to what they do. And inside those, we're looking for digits 2, 2, and 4 digits. So we're going to group, this pattern will group the first 2 digits it finds against day, the second 2 digits it finds against month, and the second 4 digits against year. So, and then we close this multi-line regex with an X. So that's just, the start is the %R and the end is the %X. And there's our innocent little string, and that string's friend. And let's use the match method with our regex pattern on our 2 strings. Oops, how did that get there? Here we go. We have 2 match data objects with our string split and named. So you can see we have a match data object for the first one, which gives us the full string. Then we have a day, which is 0, 8, a month, and a year on both of those, which is pretty neat, right? I mean, I think that's pretty useful. But what really blew my mind was when you add named captures on the end, because I was like, well, what do we do with those match data objects? Because I couldn't really figure that out. But when you add this on the end, you get a hash instead of a match data object. And of course, that is useful. So that's pretty neat, I thought. So much regex. Yeah, so my mind has been a bit blown over the past weeks while I've been learning them. And I'm like, how am I going to remember that stuff? But yes, you don't have to stress. Regex is fun and it's handy. When I spoke with a bunch of senior developers that I know, they all said the same thing. You learn regex, you stop using it, and then you've forgotten it again. So I think that's important. I took that on board anyway, so the heat is off. It's basically like, don't worry if you don't remember it, and you don't have to cram it all in there and remember it. You just have to have fun with it for a while, and you kind of get how it works. So then when you need to write one, you can cobble one together, pretty much. But as I said earlier, it's not the right tool for every job. It's wise to take a breath and think about when to use them. When you want to do a find and replace, well, that's pretty ideal. When there isn't a tool for the job. So I already had this. Yeah, don't use regex to parse HTML. I found this amazing, yes, I got shown this amazing post on, like, what's it called? Stack Overflow from 7 years ago, where this guy had a full meltdown and rant about, like, someone asking about parsing HTML with regex. I've got to share it. I should have put it in my slides, but I didn't have time. I only saw it today. But anyway, yeah, there's gems like Nokagiri for doing that stuff, so you don't need to use regex. And always think of the audience that is going to look at your code after you. Because we don't write, I mean, yes, we write code for us in the moment, but, you know, your future self or the future developer that picks up your code isn't going to thank you if it's complex. So this is when it's the wrong choice. This is for real. It is 20% of an entire, like, whopping 6,343 character regex-based email validation. So that's only, like, I could not fit it all on the screen. And my point is, like, how would you debug that? Well, you wouldn't. No human could do that. So actually, when you see this, you kind of shiver with delight and go, that is so simple. So yeah, this isn't that bad. This, again, this is named, I think it's named captures, or it's grouped. Anyway, yeah, grouped. Should you use it? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends. Should you learn regex? Yes, you should learn it. There's a ton of tools out there. These all come highly recommended. I asked the question again on the Ruby Australia Slack, and there's me down the bottom. And that's the one that I use every day. It's an online regex. You put your string in there. You can try out regex. It shows you. It's pretty amazing. We pretty much use that every day when we're writing regex, but there's some good tools. And the first one is just an intro course to working with regex, which was just an online tutorial, which was pretty neat for a good introduction. And then I haven't looked at the regex crossword, but I might if I feel particularly masochistic. Apparently it's a game and you have to play with regex. And I thought I'd leave you with this parting quote that I found on the internet, which is, regular expressions are like a particularly spicy hot sauce to be used in moderation and with restraint only when appropriate. So, thank you.